This is Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro. From the corporate office to the cab of a truck, they're here to inspire and empower women in all professions. So gear down, sit back, and enjoy.
Welcome. We're an award-winning show dedicated to empowering women in every profession through inspiring stories and expert insights. No topics off limits on our show. We power women on the road to success with expert and celebrity interviews and information you need. I'm Shelley, and Kathy's on assignment. For many women, one of life's greatest challenges is trying to balance a successful career, a fulfilling personal life, and the demands of family without losing themselves in the process. That's difficult to do today. Our guest has spent more than 2 decades navigating that balancing act while building an extraordinary career, raising a daughter, mentoring future leaders, and helping other parents find practical ways to thrive amid the chaos of everyday life. Sarah Armstrong is the author of The Art of the Juggling Act, a bite-sized guide for working parents. It's a thoughtful and practical roadmap for managing the competing demands of work, family, health, friendships, and personal fulfillment. She draws on her own experiences as a working parent. She tackles everything from guilt and burnout to setting boundaries, finding reliable childcare, co-parenting, and creating a life that reflects your own definition of success. What makes Sarah's perspective especially compelling is she's lived the challenges she writes about while leading at the highest levels of global business, including leadership roles at Coca-Cola, McKinsey Company, and today is Vice President of Global Marketing Operations at Google. Sarah started her career at Leo Burnett in Chicago in media. Her work has been recognized around the world. She was named one of Ad Agency's Women to Watch and included in Ad Agency's Book of Tens, the top 10 who made their mark. So whether you're a parent, caregiver, entrepreneur, executive, or simply somebody trying to juggle the many responsibilities life throws your way, Sarah's insights offer practical wisdom and encouragement for creating a life that works for you. We're excited to have Sarah Armstrong on our show. Welcome, Sarah.
Shelley, thanks so much. Great to be with you.
Oh, this is going to be an awesome discussion. And I want to say, you really have been a Renaissance woman in all that you've done. Oh, my goodness. You've led by example, and you've definitely had to juggle a lot of stuff.
Yes, you know what? It's been fun, but it is a challenge to juggle in life. And I feel fortunate to have been able to have the experience I've had, both raising Grace over the years, but also having my career and also trying to live the fullest life possible. So it's been fun to try to figure out how to manage the juggling act for sure.
And your perspectives are so valuable. How did you come up with this workable formula? I was wondering, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your life's journey.
Sure, I'm happy to. So, I think I actually started, young in life. I was a student athlete. And I think that actually probably were the early days of me figuring out how to juggle a lot of things in my life and figure out how to do work or how to do school and my schoolwork and go to practice and also have friends and all those things. Really, probably age 12, I was managing that aspect of my life and trying to figure out how to do all those things. And I think it translated then into my adult life in terms of, I was a scholar athlete at Georgetown as well, played volleyball there on scholarship. So it just kind of continued on. And then in the working world, though, and once you introduce children into that equation, it takes it to a whole nother level. So, and it's interesting, Shelley, because I reflected prior to writing this book, The Art of the Juggling Act, that we go to school and we learn about a lot in school, but we don't ever learn about parenting in school. And then we also don't learn about how to manage our career in school. We study something to do, in our careers, but actually how to manage your career. And then we actually don't learn how to manage both of those aspects of our life in school. And they're two of the most important things that you're going to do. And so, and how to figure out how to do them and be healthy and happy and enjoy, that journey of being a working parent. So that was really, as I reflected on all that I've learned over the years, my goal is to kind of pay it forward for the next generation of working parents who are trying to figure out, this juggling act each day and do what I can to share some thoughts. Because I do see a lot of excuse me, a lot of young parents who are surviving and maybe not thriving as working parents, and I'd really love to help them to thrive.
Thriving is the ultimate goal, isn't it? And
It
oh, the challenges today are just incredible. And I love how you're paying it forward. You were really fortuitous, though, at a very young age. I was reading you were inspired by your dad, who was a hospital CEO, and you told yourself at 6 you wanted to run something.
yeah.
That's pretty amazing. And
Yeah.
you also had a powerful woman mentor at Leo Burnett who was able to juggle a career, parenting, and family. Was that kind of what got you thinking about all of that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Going back to that memory from my dad, my dad has been someone I've looked up to my whole life, and I do have this distinct memory of sitting at his desk. He was a hospital CEO at the time, and I just said I want to run something. I just had this funny, vivid memory of that at that age, and this big desk of me being this little person in his chair. Um, but yeah, and then I did. Renetta McCann was my first mentor at Leo Burnett when I was in my early 20s, starting out my career. And there weren't, in fairness, a lot of working moms around me at that time. And in fairness, my mom worked when we were very young, but then she ended up staying home with myself and my two younger brothers. And so, but she juggled a lot. I always say, being a stay-at-home mom, you juggle many things. It's just not necessarily in the same way you do when you're managing a career and leaving the house. And so, I saw Renetta doing what she was doing, and I was studying. I basically studied working moms in my early career, to see how they were doing it, see what worked, because I knew that I wanted to both have a career and a family at some point. And so it's something that I think it's a much more common these days. 70% of women that have children are working now, so it's a much higher percentage, and you see lots of working moms in the workplace, which is amazing. But in my early career, there were fewer, and so I really was trying to study what they were doing and almost the to-dos and maybe some of the not to-dos, but I just definitely was studying because I knew it was something I wanted to try to figure out how to do.
It's wonderful how the workplaces have been a lot more accommodating for working moms and working parents, period. Uh,
Absolutely.
in the early days, I think women especially felt kind of like a square peg in a round hole if they were raising kids. And I mean, the amount of work and how they were supposed to divide their time, it
Yeah.
was almost they needed to clone themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think working moms still feel like they need to clone themselves a lot of times, and, I think part of it is what are the societal expectations of what a working mom is meant to do and where we're meant to be. I mean, I was just talking to some colleagues the other day, they were starting to just they're younger colleagues and looking at schools for their children, and I said, "That's one of the most important things is your raising your kids and deciding where your child's gonna go to school because the expectations of you as a parent, are different at different types of schools, and you really need to be choiceful about what pressures you're putting on yourself based on the pressures that school has for you as a parent. And, it sounds funny, but when we were looking for graduate schools, one of the schools says, "We expect you to be in the library sorting books, 1 afternoon a week." And I
Oh
looked
my.
and I looked at my husband on the school trip, I said, "The school is not for us."
Right?
It's like
Oh my.
yeah, I said, "That's not happening." So, but I mean, again, this is, what are the expectations that, collectively are put on you as a working parent, and what can you do to manage those and make the right decisions for you and your family so that you don't feel like you're constantly, failing or just surviving in that day-to-day, management of your life. It's just so important.
Well, when you think about it, parents, as soon as their feet hit the floor in the morning, they're on the run. They're working. They're taking the kids here, there. And when school's done at the end of the day, they're running the kids here, there, everywhere else. And even on the weekends, they barely have time to just sit down and relax. They don't have parent time.
No, no, I know, and I do think that's an important piece of the equation is figuring out as a working parent or as a working mom, what is that hour in the day or hour in the week? Sometimes you can't find it in the day, but what are those hours that you give to yourself so that you can recharge? Because it is such an intense day to day, as you said, from the minute you get up to the minute you fall asleep. And I always say when you fall asleep, you have that list of things running in your head that you either wanted to get done or didn't quite finish in any given day right before you fall asleep. So I think, finding time to recharge and, give a little bit of time back to yourself is really important because, it is definitely a marathon, even though it feels like you're sprinting every day. And
Yeah.
literally, but I do think that's one of the important things for working parents and working moms specifically to really figure out how to do in a given week. And that could, by the way, that could be going for a walk or going for a walk with a friend. It could be getting a massage. It could be, going and, literally just spending some time outside on your back porch or deck or patio by yourself. It doesn't even mean that you have to leave the house, but just having a little bit of time where you're not being asked to do something or having to care for someone else and you're just giving time to yourself.
Yeah, because it's easy to forget ourselves. And if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of other people.
Absolutely. No, it's
Uh,
fundamental, I think. Absolutely.
Stay tuned for more of Women Road Warriors coming up.
Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I have one question for you. Do you want to stop worrying about the IRS? If the answer is yes, then look no further. I've been around for years. I've helped countless people across the country, and my success rate speaks for itself. So now you know where to find good, honest help with your tax problems. What are you waiting for? If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or haven't filed in years, call me now at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com for a free consultation and get your life back.
Welcome back to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro.
If you're enjoying this informative episode of Women Road Warriors, I wanted to mention Kathy and I explore all kinds of topics that will power you on the road to success. We feature a lot of expert interviews. Plus, we feature celebrities and women who've been trailblazers. Please check out our podcast at womenroadwarriors.com and click on our episodes page. We're also available wherever you listen to podcasts, on all the major podcast channels like Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Amazon Music, Audible, you name it. Check us out and bookmark our podcast. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, YouTube, and other sites. And tell others about us. We want to help as many women as possible. Our guest is Sarah Armstrong, Vice President of Global Marketing Operations at Google and the author of The Art of the Juggling Act, a bite-sized guide for working parents. In her book, Sarah challenges some of the biggest assumptions we make about success, balance, and trying to do it all. The simple fact is, you can't do it all. And you have to take care of yourself, too. Life isn't about perfection. It's about making intentional choices that align with what matters most to do the balancing act of a working parent. This applies to anyone with a career or doing multiple things in life. Sarah, I was reading that you were inspired by a quote from James Patterson, which is really a powerful quote, and I think it became a premise for your book. Imagine life is a game in which you're juggling 5 balls in the air. You name them: work, family, friends, health, and spirit, and you're keeping all of these in the air. You'll soon understand that work is a rubber ball. If you drop it, it will bounce back. But the other 4 balls, family, friends, health, and spirit, are made of glass. If you drop one of these, they're going to be irreparably scuffed, marked, nicked, damaged, or even shattered. That's pretty powerful. Could you elaborate on how this quote has guided you? I mean, it looks like that really inspired your book.
It did. It inspired my book. It was actually a quote I have always had in my office, both in the workplace, but then at my home office now at my desk. It sits there. And, I just think that those balls are always juggling in any one given day. And I do think sometimes we have to really remind ourselves that, work will always be there, our careers will always be there, but prioritizing what's most important for your family, your friends, and yourself are really important because those nicks and scuffs that happen to you more on the personal level are things you can't, it's hard to erase those. Career things, you might have a misstep at work or not meet a deadline. There will be more deadlines. There will be more things. There'll be more work. But I really feel strongly that you have to protect and really protect the boundaries you set for your life with the people that are important in your life so that you can be there for them. So I think that's one of the most important things. And I talk a lot about setting and protecting boundaries because I think many of us talk about doing them or might think we've done them, but we don't protect them in the way that we need to. And it can really have significant impact on, your kids, your family, and friendships, et cetera.
Women have a hard time setting boundaries, I think more so than men, don't you?
I think so. I think part of it is because we want to a little bit of we want to please, we want to make sure everything's taken care of. And also the expectation that we are kind of trying to do all of the things, kind of quite honestly all at once. So I think the thing about, and I say that interestingly enough, when you set a boundary, and I generally say this to people that I'm mentoring, like when you set a boundary, you need to make sure you tell everyone around you that you've set that boundary, whatever that boundary is, because people will walk all over your boundaries because they don't know they exist. But if you've told them about that boundary and you ask them to help you protect the boundary, then they feel equally accountable to help you with that. And so, no one can protect a boundary that they don't know about. So that's one of my big things for women specifically is to say, you know what, this is what these are the hours I'm trying to carve out, for example, with my kids at night. And I'll give you my own personal example. When Grace was growing up, I actually had on my calendar, blocked on my calendar from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at night, and it said Grace time. Now it happened to be her name. It also worked well for what I was trying to do. And I said to my assistant, look, no one can touch that time. That's when I'm getting Grace, dinner and we're getting ready for bed and we're reading and, that's her time. And, I said, if someone, because I've been in a global role my entire career. And I said, if someone wants to talk to me, I'm happy to talk to them at, 9 p.m. after I put her to bed, or I could talk to them at 8 a.m. the next morning after dropping off her carpool. But those hours, that 6 to 8, we're not touching. And I can tell you that over the course of her growing up, I maybe took one call during that 6 to 8. I mean, it was so protected. And I just share that because I think sometimes we don't think we can do that. And, even in high demanding careers, I do think we need to do that because otherwise, you're not able to be present with your children and be there even for just the day to day of, bath time or dinner time or whatever the case may be. So I'm a big believer that both setting them, communicating them to those around you and then really protecting them is really important.
I think that's really good. And I think a lot of people probably, when they first try that, probably feel guilty. But I mean, it's so important because today, with today's technology, everybody's on.
Yeah,
They're getting texts 24/7 almost. It's
absolutely.
and that really robs your family. It robs yourself.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree with you, Shelley. And actually, one of the things on staying on the boundary topic, but just a really important thing is I have a point in my book that talks about finding a cupboard. And the reason I make this point is that our technology, if so, I had a cupboard in my back hallway when Grace was growing up, and I would literally walk in the door and I would take my tote bag with my laptop and I would put it in the cupboard. It literally was, it was put away. And I did that because I really think that if you bring your work laptop into the house, put it on the kitchen table, put it on the kitchen counter, it's there. Even if it's closed, it's talking to you.
Yeah.
It is literally drawing you in. And I feel the same thing even with our mobile phones, obviously. And these days the challenges our mobile phones are almost like the remote controls for our homes. So it's a much harder thing to put them in a cupboard. But I did also have a charging station inside a cupboard so that when I came in for those couple hours with Grace, I put it in the cupboard, and I thought, you know what, if someone needs to reach me, I'll look at it at 8, because I really believe, so strongly believe that our children deserve for us to be present when we're with them, and that
Yes.
the technology in our lives pulls our attention away from them, and they don't deserve that. They don't deserve to have
Yeah.
to share the attention that we're trying to give them with a piece of technology. And it's interesting because I am proud to say, and I look back and was really took a lot of willpower, but in Grace's growing up until she was 15 years old, she never saw my work laptop.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I would pull it out after she was asleep. And so I really believe that I didn't want, because I already worked a ton, Shelley. So I mean, there was a lot of working going on. So I didn't want the few hours that I had with Grace to be associated with her seeing me and my work laptop together. Now, in the hybrid world that we all live in now, and a lot of the work from home dynamics we have, that's a harder thing to do for parents. And I know, so saying that, it's not maybe as realistic today to say that, especially if people have home offices. But I say, if you have a home office situation, close the door,
Yep.
or put it, even if you don't have an office and you do work at your kitchen table, put that laptop in a drawer, in a cupboard somewhere in the hours that you're trying to focus with your children and spend that really precious time with them, because they only get a couple hours a day with us. And I just really feel strongly that they shouldn't have to share it with your laptop and your phone.
And they need that kind of interpersonal interaction. They need that nurturing because
Absolutely.
that's going to shape them as adults.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it shows, and I think it also shows practices you would want them to try to follow in their adult life down the road. And I think, again, this is a whole, society these days that we are so tied to our technology. But I do think these moments are moments when you can show that, that personal interaction, that quality time, having conversations is just really so important.
Well, if we don't talk to each other and we don't talk to our kids, they're not going to learn how to talk.
This is true. This is true. It's very important.
And with all of our technology, it's kind of interesting how a lot of people don't know how to talk. It's like,
Yes.
can we
Yeah.
communicate? I mean, we
Yeah.
have the biggest opportunity we've ever had worldwide to communicate with anybody and everybody. And
Yeah.
that seems to be lacking. And
Yeah.
what you're giving as a template really is so powerful. It gets back to the basics of family time, me
Yeah.
time, and interaction.
Stay tuned for more of Women Road Warriors coming up.
Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I have one question for you. Do you want to stop worrying about the IRS? If the answer is yes, then look no further. I've been around for years. I've helped countless people across the country, and my success rate speaks for itself. So now you know where to find good, honest help with your tax problems. What are you waiting for? If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or haven't filed in years, call me now at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com for a free consultation and get your life back.
Welcome back to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro.
We're talking with Sarah Armstrong, Vice President of Global Marketing Operations at Google. Sarah's book, The Art of the Juggling Act, offers practical wisdom for anybody who's trying to manage the competing demands of work, family, friendships, health, and personal fulfillment. One of the most memorable ideas she has involves 5 balls that we're all juggling, and why only one of them can safely be dropped. And that's not family, friends, health, or yourself. Boundaries are super important. So is self-care and setting time aside for our loved ones and ourselves. That's part of our boundaries. Sarah, I also see that you reject the whole concept of having it all, society's definition of success. I think that we're always trying to achieve this, utopian lifestyle and goal. That really does seem kind of ridiculous, doesn't it? What does having it all mean?
Well, it's interesting. I would say that the interesting thing about having it all is that, it's something that it looks very different for different people. So what does having it all mean to you? I think having a universal definition of having it all is not realistic. And, I also believe that you might be able to quote unquote have it all, but you may not have it all. It might happen at different stages of your career. And so, or sorry, in terms of your life. And so I think that we have to just stop spending time comparing ourselves and trying to live up to societal benchmarks of what having it all means. That's maybe when you say that I reject the concept, because I just think you have to think about what you want out of your life and then define what having it all means to you. And that equation, what those components are of your life and how you want to live them, is absolutely up to you to define. And I think the societal pressures that we put on ourselves of what that picture looks like is what I think has a lot of women specifically feeling like they're not delivering on this model of having it all. And I just would love to release that pressure. And going back to your comment earlier about feeling guilty about what you're doing or not doing, I think we have to give ourselves a lot more grace in the day to day and say that, and I had a saying, Shelley, that I would say to Grace, and raising her, and I would say, I'm doing the best I can. That was my motto. And because some days were, better than others in terms of trying to juggle everything, but I'd say, Mom's doing the best she can. And I think that's something we need to tell ourselves and take it to heart, that we're all doing the best we can. And the concept of having it all is something that is a wonderful thing to strive for, in terms of you want to feel like you're fulfilling, all that you want to do in your life. So that's definitely a wonderful goal to have. It's definitely a goal I've had. But I just think it's being realistic about how all of that comes together. And is it really all at once, or does it happen over the course of your life?
Well, you have in your book, mindset is essential, and it really is a lot about that. I think that women they're hard on themselves. They feel guilty. Gee, I didn't do this today, or I should have done this. The shoulds, that's a bad word. I
Yeah.
should.
Yeah.
And perfection, no one's perfect. No one's perfect. And actually, the message you gave Grace was powerful. I'm doing the best I can. So she realized growing up that Mom can't do everything. If she isn't perfect, but she's
Yeah.
trying her best. And I guess
Yeah.
that's all any of us can do, right?
Absolutely. And we say that to our kids all the time, right? If they're going out to try something new, or even in school, just do your best. We say that a lot to our kids, I think. And it's a wonderful message. I just think we need to say that same message to ourselves. And, I think sometimes we beat ourselves up for the little things that we didn't do. And, one of the really small points of guidance, but actually important ones that I give to moms, because I think we're always trying to do it quickly. And like when things come in, you're like, oh, I need to do that right now. And I think we also need to say, not everything has to happen in the moment. And we are a society that also is expecting that, responses happen immediately, and everything's supposed to happen right now. And so I have two pieces of kind of bite-sized guidance that I feel really strongly about in that way. And one is, I call it the Sunday list. And it sounds a bit tactical, Shelley, but there's all those things that come at you in a given day or week. And what I did over the years is I just had this list on my phone. I called it the Sunday list. And everything that didn't have to happen that day, I just put it on my Sunday list. And I just basically it was parked. It was written down. And then it gave me the permission to forget that it was there. And then on Sundays, I'd set aside an hour, and sometimes maybe a little bit longer, to basically crash through that Sunday list and figure out what are the things that I needed to do. It could be responding to a birthday party invitation. It could be ordering, a baby gift, whatever the tactical things that come in a given week that you're supposed to handle. It could be signing the permission slip that's due on a given day, or ordering the school uniforms or the sports uniforms. There's just all these things that come through as a working mom. And I think sometimes we feel the pressure that we have to do it that night that it came through, or that day. And it's like, no, no, no. Like, give yourself the time, put it on the list, and you'll get through it. And some things might be longer term. You're like, you know what? I'm not going to get to that this week. It'll go on the next Sunday list. It's not going to go on the Monday or Tuesday list. So I just think that is one of those things that has really helped me. And actually, I've shared it with a lot of young working moms. They're like, it's so great to have that Sunday list. I go, I know, because it just releases your brain. And then when you do go to sleep at night, those aren't the things that are jumping around in your brain that you feel like you didn't get done. You've taken them off that pressure list of, oh, I didn't get that done today. So I do think it's a tactic, but I've really found to be incredibly helpful. And then the other thing that I feel we as women specifically don't do well is, I talk about it in my book, The Power of Saying No. And I was given some advice, and it was only in the last 10 years, and I wish I'd been given it much earlier in my life. But I was talking to a colleague. He was asking me to attend a meeting, and I said, oh, I can't attend this meeting. I started explaining why, and he stopped me mid-sentence, and he said, Sarah, you don't need to explain to me why you can't make the meeting. All you need to say is, I can't make this meeting. He's like, the reason that's important is at the point when you start giving me the reason of why you can't do it, I start judging you on whether you made the right decision. And he goes, and that's not my judgment to make. He's like, you have made a decision that's best for you, whatever the reason is, and just say no, and you don't need to give a reason behind it. And so I have to tell you, Shelley, as someone who, is juggling a lot in any given day, that little piece of advice was so free. And the juggling act that we do have in the day to day, and all the things we're being asked to do, when you do have to say no, how you manage saying no, I think is really important. And that piece of advice is one of the best pieces of advice I've ever been given.
That is powerful. Yeah, because when you think about it, when you have to explain yourself, you feel like you're explaining yourself to the other person. You're almost apologizing for saying no.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it goes, by the way, it applies to both your work world, but also I think it applies to your personal life when you have to
Mhm.
decline an invitation or say, well, I can't make that. And, you should say, I'm just sorry, I can't make that. Not, I can't make that because I'm doing something with so and so. It's like, because again, your friend or your family member is like, well, isn't this as important? So I just think it has been such a little gift to myself, I would say, using that advice on a daily and weekly basis. And I think as women, again, because we feel that guilt of what we aren't doing versus saying, no, I prioritize what I've decided is the best thing for me to do with that hour or with that weekend or whatever the case. And so I do think that's a really important piece. And these are just, again, they're small. They feel small, like they're small little pieces of advice, but they really kind of unlock some freedom to free up your mind or free up that feeling of guilt. And those are the things that I think then when you can not have those things, like the feeling of guilt or freeing up your mind, you then enjoy life much more, right? You enjoy the journey of this, like, all of our lives are this kind of collection of hours and days and weeks, but I think the whole point is to enjoy it. And I feel so strongly about that. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in all that we're trying to get done and all that we're trying to do and where we're needing to show up and all these things and really just enjoying the whole experience of, being a parent, managing career, all the things that come with it and just trying to enjoy it. It's something I just feel so strongly. I'd love for more people to do that because life is very short and you just really want to enjoy every day to the fullest.
People don't live in the moment a lot of times.
I agree. I agree. We live a lot in the future or in the past, in fairness. But yeah, I think living in the present, being present, and really focusing on enjoying the present moment you're in with whoever you're with, whether it's your children or if you're in a meeting and discussing something, whatever the case is, I think being present is just so key.
And I think if you concentrate on living in the moment, you're thoroughly enjoying things, you're observing things you might not have before, and time
Mhm.
doesn't feel like it's just rushing by us and fleeting. You're immersed in it.
I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. Yeah. And I also think sometimes because of all that we're needing to think about in a given day, I think that the ability to be present is actually a muscle you need to build. And I think the way you build that, and I talk about it in my book, is the concept of a compartmentalization muscle.
Yep.
And I joke that I do Pilates, and they talk to you a lot about having a strong core muscle, which I do think you need in life. But I do think for your brain and for how you think about things, having a compartmentalization muscle is fundamental. And what that means is, if you're coming home after a long day and you're about to spend time with your kids, being able to, compartmentalize whatever happened at work and set it aside and really just focus and being in your mom or your parent mode. And then, if you're at work, the flip side, happens that, if your child really wasn't getting ready for school quickly enough and you're rushing and, it just was a bad start to the morning and you get into your first meeting, setting that aside too and be like, okay, I'm here. I'm going to focus. I'm going to be present in this conversation. And, again, these are muscles we have to build. A lot of people don't have them naturally. But I do think it is also one of the tools that if you can focus on building that muscle, it's one of the tools that you then have to be able to manage this kind of ebb and flow of your life that does have a lot of different components in a given day, whether it's the personal side, the professional side, or sometimes when they're trying to meet in the middle in some of our hybrid working ways. So I think it's a really important muscle to have.
So you're essentially teaching parents to have structure. I mean, we have structure at work
Mhm.
and we're acclimated to that and we understand that. But then when we go home, if we don't have that structure, everything can feel like chaos.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I do think there's elements. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I do think there's elements of being organized, of figuring out how you can live your day so you don't feel like it's happening to you. And that it's all just happening. But I think, yeah, there is an element to structure, but there's also an element of the fluidity of life and what you have to be able to roll with as well. things are going to happen. And I think when those things happen that aren't expected, it's also that, you have to roll with it and go, okay, well, that wasn't quite how that day was meant to go, or that, whatever the situation is. But I do think there's an element of structure. It's funny, one of my big beliefs as a parent is figuring out, I talk about 3 things that I think our children remember of a childhood. And in fairness, this is my own reflections of my childhood. I had a wonderful, amazing childhood, but the things I most remember are the travel we did as a family, the traditions we had as a family, and the special moments that I had either with one of my parents or as a family. And I think thinking about, so I call about, say travel traditions and special moments. Like, what are those things that you're looking to instill into life that are the things your kids will remember, down the road? And, they can be small things. I had a little tradition I did with Grace where on her birthday, I asked her the same list of questions every year from the time she was 3 until she was 18. And it was my little tradition. There was like 36 questions on this list. And actually I put it in the back and put the list in the back of my book. And it was so fun over the years, Shelley, to ask. And I didn't show Grace the points every year. So every year I just asked her questions, and we would see over the course of her life how she answered them. And it was just a fun little tradition. It's like little
Yeah.
things that just like add, a memory that's special. But I think it's just figuring out what are those things in your day to day and it goes back to your point about structure. They're just little moments of tradition you can build in that are special and become really special memories over the course of time.
And those are things that can be carried forward as a family tradition too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's fun. We also had this special tradition. We made these funny things called mud balls, which are basically peanut butter and chocolate balls that we made. And I had made those with my mom growing up, and then we made them and then we delivered them around town to friends around town, and I took them to work. Grace would be my little elf and come to work during the holiday season, and we'd pass them out to my different colleagues that we wanted to give little gifts to. So yeah, again, these are small things, but it's fun. I mean, literally, Grace is now graduated and out in the world as a working adult. But this Christmas, she goes, "Mom, I made mud balls."
She made mud balls. That's great.
And I said, I love it. I love that the tradition's continuing. So yeah, it's just, again, these are small things. It's a baked good. But they're things that do stick with your kids. And when you have those things that you carve out the time to do with them, because, you can also buy the store-bought thing and pass it out to colleagues and friends and family. But I do think there's something special about spending time with your kids, making something together and then sharing it with others that is a special moment.
Stay tuned for more of Women Road Warriors coming up.
Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward is telling the story of the industry. Our safety champions, the women of trucking, independent contractors, the next generation of truckers, and more. Help us promote the best of our industry. Share your story and what you love about trucking. Share images of a moment you're proud of. And join us on social media. Learn more at truckingmovesamerica.com.
Welcome back to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro.
In The Art of the Juggling Act, Sarah Armstrong tackles some of the issues that keep many women awake at night: guilt, burnout, boundaries, and the pressure to live up to impossible expectations, like the whole concept of having it all, no matter what. Sarah believes you can achieve success on your own terms. She shares practical strategies for defining success and creating a life that works for you instead of everybody else. It's great advice. Sarah? You cover everything in your book, and it's a really wonderful template. You talk about boundaries, of course, and building your support network. I'm not sure women are good at doing that a lot of times either. You talk about organization, your lists. I've been huge on lists for many, many decades.
Yes. Yes.
It really is a great way to, okay, it's on my list, and you scratch it off as you accomplish, so you don't feel like you're not accomplishing stuff. You talk about the power of routines, being social, every possibility that a parent can encounter. You give them basically a guideline of how to do this. And
Yeah.
like you said, there's no lesson in school on how to parent.
Yeah.
We can set goals. This is what we want to be. This is what we want to do. But once you're there, how do you do it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that was my big realization, Shelley, as I got into this working world. And ironically, the inspiration of writing this book and writing them in these bite-sized pieces is I would be mentoring young moms that would be coming into my team, and we'd be talking and they're like, what did you do with Grace? And I would talk, and so it was funny. I would have these conversations and I would write the little nugget of advice on my phone. I'm like, oh, that's a good one. I'll remember that for later. Because I had never intended to write a book. And so, those just kind of built up over the years. And, the bite-sized, there's about 140 bite-sized pieces in my book broken out in these various categories. And they're meant to be, by the way, it's meant to be a guide that you just have with you. Like you don't need to read it cover to cover. It could be you just pick it up in the table of contents. It's broken out by those 140 topics. So, and I have colleagues, it's cute. I just had one of my colleagues that said, it was this actually a working father. He said to me, he's like, I have it on my bedside table and my wife and I are trading who gets to read it at night. I said, I love that, and but it's, I also believe, and I think all those working parents out there will relate. No one really has time to read a book, to be honest, when you're managing the Juggling Act. That's why I wrote this in such a bite-sized guide type of way. So I know, because I always joke that if you're working print, you try to read a book that's like chaptered books, you end up rereading the first page of that chapter a couple times because you keep on coming back like, where did I leave off? And so this book is really meant to be something you can pick up each page. It's only a paragraph or a page for a given topic. So it is not long. It's very bite-sized, and it is really meant to help that working parent that's just looking for a little point of reflection on a given topic and for something to think through.
You cover everything, the staying power, family memories.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, when we look back on our lives, that's really what we think about. It isn't going to be what we did at work.
Absolutely. No, and that's why I feel so strongly about all the what I mentioned earlier in terms of the travel you're going to do, and again, travel could be traveling to the next town over. It doesn't necessarily require getting on a plane. But it's just those moments when you change the location of where you are with your family, you're automatically going to create memories that you take with you. And I think we all grow and learn when you travel to different places. So I think that's a big one. I also think, we haven't talked about it, but like volunteering with your kids and giving back, I feel very strongly about. And it's something that Grace and I did throughout her childhood. We actually we went to a soup kitchen. We lived in Atlanta at the time, and we would go to a soup kitchen about 6 times a year and serve lunch to the homeless in Atlanta. And I have to tell you, those moments that Grace and I shared in doing that together were both special, but they also really, there's so many life lessons that came through that experience. And, I think that's an important one. And, I also just, even from teaching Grace over the time, I gave her 3 piggy banks when she was 3 years old. And one was for spending, one was for saving, and one was for giving.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. And so there were 3. And then what I did is I took a little sticker and I put like over the pig's mouth. I put but spending, saving, and giving. So like they were smiling with whatever the word was. And so basically so I gave her $1 for each of the piggy banks starting at age 3. And over the years, every year she would take out, she could do whatever she wanted with the spending. We took her to the bank and literally physically went to the bank and opened up a bank account so she would see what that looked like that process looked like. And then we would take her money to the bank teller and she would give it to the bank teller and put it in the bank. Because I think so many things are, electronic these days. You don't understand that, like what's happening in that moment. And then on the giving front, we would take all the money out of the giving, and then she got to decide where she was going to give that money. And she's a huge animal fan, and so she wanted to give it to Humane Society. So we took all those little dollars that she'd saved up and we drove to the Humane Society, and she took it into the front desk and we handed it to the person there. And I wanted it to be very tangible for her of what it meant, and then spending, obviously she could go to wherever she wanted to spend those couple dollars. But I think it's just teaching our kids these things. Sometimes life gets crazy and we don't spend the time teaching them some of the fundamentals. And I do think the fundamental of giving, and what giving means in your life is really important. And so I'm proud to say, even as Grace is going out as an adult, and she's just graduated from college this last year, but she's already built into her life as an adult 2 different volunteer opportunities that she is doing in Seattle where she lives. And that just makes me feel really good because that's been instilled in her since she was young. And
Mm-hmm.
it's her own doing. I didn't say, "So where are you gonna volunteer?" She's like, "Hey, mom, I'm doing X and Y." And, that just, it makes me smile. So,
So she saw the value in that. I mean, giving it, paying it forward, giving to others.
mm,
That's what we're about. That's what we're supposed to be about. Not being self-centered. And
yeah.
that's so powerful. And the piggy bank example, what a great idea, you know?
Yeah, and it's so simple, it's a simple one, and everyone can do it, and you can start at whatever age. I mean, but I started at 3 just because I thought early on, I just thought, "Okay, let's see how we can, help her with this." And so it was, yeah, so it's also something I've shared with us, and a lot of parents have been like, "I love the piggy bank," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's a good one." So again,
Mhm.
there's different little nuggets in this book, bite-sized pieces of things to reflect on. And many parents, there's things that might not be applicable, or they wouldn't say is for them. But I have found that there's a lot of pieces that you can reflect on and say, how do I integrate this into how I'm raising my children and also managing this juggling act with my career?
Your template, basically, I think, is going to help people enjoy their lives so much more, and expand the possibilities. You're teaching people to design their lives intentionally rather than just kind of meandering through life, right?
Absolutely, yes. And I do think there's a lot of intentionality in this, in the approach I've taken, to the book, and having people to reflect on, what it means to be a parent in this day and age, but also going back to some of the fundamentals that aren't, that are kind of universal and timeless. And I think those are the things that I felt really strongly about, because I think, society evolves and changes. But when I was writing this book, I thought I want someone to be able to pick up this book 20 and 30 years from now and still read these things and think, oh, I could do this. This is something I could do with my children, or I could do in terms of how I'm thinking about my career. So I really felt like that was what I wanted to be able to communicate, because I wanted this to live on for parents, generations to come, to build it, to use as a guide.
It's a wonderful tool. And
Yeah.
you also talk about work-life balance. Balance doesn't mean working less. You have some really great messages there. Uh,
Yeah.
because I think people think, well, if I work less, what is your concept on all of that?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because, some people say, does balance exist? Is what does balance mean? And again, I think that, the concept and the definition of balance, again, is very personal. And, I think that, my definition of balance and your definition of balance, Shelley, could be very different, right? But it's about you thinking about, what does balance mean to you, and how do you want to balance these aspects of your life in a way that work for you, work for your family, work for what you're trying to achieve with your career, and really thinking through those elements. And, sometimes, in fairness, and I would say there would be points in my career where I might be out of balance, or there'd be imbalance in my day-to-day life. And I would reflect and say, okay, I can see that that's happening, for what my definition of balance was, in fairness. And I would think about how I wanted to readjust so that things felt more in balance for what my definition of balance meant. And so I do think, it's very personal, and it's also going to evolve depending on the ages of your children, what they need from you, the stage of career you're in, and what your career needs. And so it is a matter of really not feeling like you're going to set that definition and just going to be the same thing for the course of your life, or the course of your children's lives as you're raising them. But I do think that it is something to reflect on and think about, what is your definition of balance, and how do you want to manage that? And so that's kind of how I think about it. But it's going to evolve over time, and that's okay. That really is okay, because that's what the juggling act is all about, is
Sure.
is figuring out how to balance those things over the course of time. And those 5 balls you mentioned.
You really cover everything on how to juggle all those balls, and
Yeah.
every kind of concept, every kind of possibility. You have
Yeah.
it in the chapters of this book. It's a wonderful way to rewire perspectives, if you will, and enrich people's lives. And they can take what they need and leave the rest, whatever applies to them, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely one of those things that I feel that everyone can kind of take a little bit from it. And then there's other things that may not apply. But I've found in the parents that have been reading this book, the feedback I do get, and I do appreciate all the feedback. So I'm always open to any feedback for anyone that reads the book, is that they can really take something away, think about it, and then say, oh, that's something I want to do with my kids, or, oh, I had thought about the power of saying no in that way, or, whatever the case is. And so those reflections are, to your point, I just want everyone to be able to live their life to the fullest, and whatever that looks like for individuals. And this book is really hopefully my gift to those that are trying to think about it, and something that's very approachable in terms of just being there when you need it.
It really is, and it's something that can be passed on through future generations. I think it's going to always apply, which is terrific. Where do people find The Art of the Juggling Act, a bite-sized guide for working parents?
Oh, thank you. So yes, it's available in any of the online booksellers and in bookstores around the country and actually around the world. And you can also go to thejugglingAct.com and order the book through my website and learn a bit more about the background on the book and some of the things. But yes, those are the two ways and you can also reach me at thejugglingAct.com as well. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Sarah, for being on the show. This is really valuable for our listeners, and I'm amazed at your perspectives. Your wisdom is just infinite in a lot of this. It really is.
Oh, thank you, Shelley. Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I just hope that everyone out there can enjoy life to the fullest and enjoy the Juggling Act, because that's what life's all about.
Thank you, Sarah. This has been terrific. If you're getting value from our show, Women Road Warriors, be sure to hit follow on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss out on what's coming next. We hope you've enjoyed this latest episode. And if you want to hear more episodes of Women Road Warriors or learn more about our show, be sure to check out womenroadwarriors.com. And please follow us on social media. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. On our website, we also have a selection of podcasts just for women. There are a series of podcasts from different podcasters. So if you're in the mood for women's podcasts, just click the Power Network tab on womenroadwarriors.com. You'll have a variety of shows to listen to anytime you want to. Podcasts made for women. Women Road Warriors is on all the major podcast channels like Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Audible, YouTube, and others. Check us out. And please follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro. If you want to be a guest on the show or have a topic or feedback, email us at sjohnson@womenroadwarriors.com.